The slap echoed down the hallway, sharp, sudden, and cruel. For a moment, everything froze. The chatter, the laughter, even the sound of footsteps faded into silence. All eyes turned to the girl with the wide brown eyes and trembling hands. Amira, the quiet one. The girl who sat alone at lunch, who never spoke unless called on, who everyone assumed would just take it. Her books scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. One of them, her favorite journal, lay open, its pages fluttering as if trying to speak for her. The bully, tall, loud, smiling like he'd just won something, stared at her, waiting for a reaction. The crowd waited too. Phones were already out, cameras rolling, but Amira didn't cry. She didn't shout. She didn't even blink. She just stood there, eyes locked on him, breathing steady, like something inside her had finally broken loose. Mornings at Fairview. High always began the same way, the sound of sneakers squeaking across the waxed floors, the hum of lockers slamming shut, the faint echo of laughter that never seemed to reach Amira. She walked the halls like a ghost, clutching her notebook to her chest, her curly hair falling forward just enough to shield her face. Fairview wasn't a bad school, at least. That's what people said. It sat in a small southern town where everyone knew each other's parents, where Friday night football was sacred, and where quiet kids like Amira could disappear in plain sight. She didn't mind being invisible. Or at least, that's what she told herself. Every morning she'd sit in the second row of Mr. Dalton's history class, always early, always prepared. Her grades were perfect, her handwriting neat, her voice soft. She spoke only when she had to, and even then, it was like she measured every word before letting it leave her mouth. If I don't stand out, I can't be a target, she would think. If I just keep my head down, I'll get through it. But Fairview had a way of noticing difference, never letting it go. The group that ruled the halls wasn't just the usual kind of popular. They were loud, confident, and cruel in the way only teenagers who've never faced real consequences can be. At the center of them was Brianna, the self-proclaimed queen of everything. She wasn't just beautiful, she was dangerous. The kind of girl who could ruin you with a whisper. Then there was Tyler. Her boyfriend, tall, charismatic, captain of the basketball team. The kind of boy teachers adored and parents trusted. He smiled wide, but behind that smile was something sharp. Amira had never spoken to either of them. She didn't need to. She'd seen the way they looked at people who didn't fit the new kid from Chicago, the overweight boy in gym class, the girl who wore thrift store clothes. And lately, they had started to look at her that way too. It began with small things, whispers when she walked by, laughter that stopped just as she turned around, notes left on her desk with words she pretended not to read. Quiet freak. Sad little shadow. Go back where you came from. At first, she ignored it. She'd learned that silence could be armor. But silence can also be mistaken for weakness. One afternoon in the cafeteria, she sat at her usual corner table, sketching in her journal while the noise of hundreds of conversations swirled around her. She wasn't alone, but she wasn't with anyone either. Across the room, Brianna leaned against Tyler's shoulder, scrolling through her phone. A smirk spread across her face. "Look," Brianna said loudly enough for half the room to hear. "Little Miss Mute is writing her sad poetry again. Someone should tell her this isn't therapy." Laughter rippled across the tables. Amira kept her eyes down, pretending not to notice, but her hands trembled slightly. She could feel the eyes, the heat of them, pressing against her skin. Tyler chimed in, grinning. "Hey, maybe she's writing about me. I mean, who wouldn't?" The cafeteria roared. Brianna playfully shoved him, pretending to be offended. Amira forced herself to take another bite of her sandwich, her heart pounding. "Don't react," she told herself. "Don't give them what they want." But inside, something cracked. Not from anger, not yet, but from exhaustion. The kind that builds slowly, layer after layer, until one day it breaks through. After lunch, Amira slipped into the library. It was her sanctuary rows of stories where no one mocked her voice or her hair or her skin. She sat in the corner by the window, opened her journal, and wrote one sentence that would later mean everything. One day, they'll remember my silence and wish they had listened. The school buzzed with the same noise, the same laughter, the same ignorance. But something had shifted inside her, and the people who had laughed, they were about to find out that even the quietest voices can shake an entire world when they finally decide to speak. The week began like any other. The same dull gray skies above Fairview High. The same routine of classes, the same whispers that followed Amira like a shadow she couldn't shake. But something in the air felt different, heavy. Even the hallways seemed to hum with quiet anticipation, as if the building itself knew something was about to happen. It started small, the way these things often do, in English class. Mr. Lawson was discussing To Kill a Mockingbird.
Irony.
Injustice, big words that floated around the room like paper birds no one really understood. Amira sat in the back, her pen moving quickly across her notebook. She wasn't writing notes. She was writing feeling. "They tell us to stand up for what's right," she scribbled, "but they look away when wrong happens right in front of them." Across the room, Brianna watched her. Her perfect nails tapped against the desk, each click a spark of irritation. She leaned toward Tyler and whispered, "She always writing something." "I think she's better than us or what?" Tyler smirked. "Nah, she's just weird. Probably journaling about her imaginary friends." A few students giggled. Amira didn't look up, but she heard every word. When the bell rang, Brianna accidentally brushed past Amira's desk, sending her notebook sliding to the floor. The pages fanned open, revealing one of her poems, a raw, honest piece about being unseen. Brianna bent down, snatched it up, and began to read aloud. "They whisper behind my back because they're afraid of what I see." She laughed, loud and cruel. "Wow, deep. What are you like the next Maya Angelou?" The room chuckled. Mr. Lawson, caught between pretending not to hear and not wanting confrontation, simply said, "All right, class, that's enough." But his voice had no weight. The damage had already been done. Amira quietly reached for her notebook, her hand trembling. Her throat burned, but she swallowed the words, trying to climb out. "If I speak, they win. If I stay silent, they still win." The rest of the day passed in fragments, laughter in the halls, whispers she couldn't escape. By the final bell, the pressure in her chest felt unbearable. She walked faster than usual, hoping to make it to her locker and leave unnoticed. But Brianna and Tyler were waiting. They stood by the entrance, surrounded by their friends, the kind of crowd that fed on drama, always hungry for someone else's pain. The hallway was clearing out, but a handful of students lingered, sensing something was about to happen. "Hey, poetry girl," Brianna called out. "Read us something new." Amira kept walking. Her heart thudded against her ribs. Tyler stepped in front of her, blocking the exit. Don't be rude. We just want to hear your pretty words." "I don't have anything to say," Amira said softly, eyes on the floor. "Of course you don't," Brianna sneered. "You never do." Laughter. Phones raised. Someone whispered, "Record this." Tyler leaned closer, grinning. "You think you're too good for us, huh? Always walking around like you're better." Amira finally looked up, not with defiance, but with exhaustion. "No," she said quietly. "I just want to be left alone." For a split second, the hallway was silent. Then Brianna laughed again. "Leave her alone? Nah, she needs to learn her place." And that's when it happened. Tyler's hand shot out quick, almost casual, and the sound of the slap sliced through the air like a gunshot. The impact was small, but the silence that followed was enormous. Amira's head turned with the force of it. Her cheek burned, hot and stinging. Her notebook slipped from her fingers, hitting the floor with a soft thud. No one moved. No one spoke. The laughter had vanished. A single phone camera was still recording, trembling in someone's hand. Amira didn't cry. She didn't yell. She simply stood there, eyes wide, breath steady, staring at Tyler as if seeing him for the first time. Her face flushed, but her expression was unreadable. In that instant, something changed. Not in the air, not in the crowd, but in her. "This is it," she thought. "This is who they think I am. This is who they'll remember unless I change it." Brianna's voice broke the silence. "Oh my God, Tyler, chill. It was just a joke." But even she sounded uncertain. Amira slowly bent down and picked up her notebook. Her hand shook, but her voice, when it came, was calm. "You shouldn't have done that," she said. Tyler shrugged, forcing a laugh. "What? You gonna write a poem about it?" A few weak laughs followed, but they faded quickly. Something in Amira's eyes made them stop. It wasn't anger, it was clarity. She straightened her posture, clutching the notebook to her chest. "You'll see," she whispered. Then she turned and walked down the hall. Each step echoed against the tile, slow, deliberate, unbroken. No one tried to stop her. Even Brianna, suddenly unsure of her own power, stared after her. Mr. Lawson emerged from his classroom moments later, asking what had happened. No one answered. The crowd began to disperse, phones slipping back into pockets. But the video would not stay hidden for long. By the end of the day, it was already spreading, whispers turning into shares, laughter turning into shock. The clip was short, just 6 seconds, but it carried the weight of every ignored moment before it. The next morning, Amira didn't come to school. Her absence spoke louder than any words could. In homes across the town, students rewatched the clip, some with guilt, some with fascination. Comments flooded group chats. "Bro, that's crazy. Tyler went too far. She didn't even hit back. She just stared." No one knew what Amira was thinking, or what she would do next. But Amira did, because that moment, that slap, that silence, that humiliation had awoken something she had buried for years. She was done being invisible, and the next time they saw her, she wouldn't be the quiet girl they laughed at. She would be the voice none of them could ignore. For 2 days after the slap, Amira didn't leave her room. The blinds stayed closed. Her phone sat face down on the nightstand, vibrating every few minutes with messages she couldn't bear to read. Somewhere out there, 6 seconds of her life, the most humiliating 6 seconds she'd ever lived, were being replayed by strangers. Dissected, mocked, pitied, her mother knocked softly each morning. "You want breakfast, baby?" Amira's answer was always the same: "Not hungry." She spent those days in silence, staring at her reflection. Her cheek had stopped hurting. The ache inside hadn't. She tried to write, to pour it out the way she always had, but the words wouldn't come. Every time she touched her pen to paper, she saw the crowd's faces, heard the laughter, felt the sting again. "You shouldn't have done that." Her own voice echoed in her head, calm to calm, and then, on the third night, something changed. She picked up her phone. Notifications flooded the screen, texts from classmates, strangers, even people she hadn't spoken to in years. One message stood out: "At Truth in Motion, you handled that with so much grace. They wanted a reaction, and you gave them power instead." Another said, "What he did was disgusting. If you ever speak out, people will listen." For the first time, she scrolled through the comments under the video. The same kids who had laughed now looked uncomfortable. Some defended her. Some apologized. And then, beneath all the noise, one comment caught her breath. "Don't let them write your story for you." It was from a user with no profile picture. Anonymous. Simple. But it landed like thunder. That night, Amira opened her journal again. Her hand trembled at first, then steadied. "They thought they silenced me. But silence isn't surrender. It's preparation." She wrote for hours, words spilling out like a river breaking through a dam. Every insult, every moment of invisibility, every ounce of pain, it all poured onto the page. When she finished, she stared at the final line: "You can't break what refuses to stay small." It wasn't a poem this time. It was a declaration. The next morning, she showered, dressed, and tied her curls back. When she walked into school, the halls fell into whispers. Eyes followed her, not with mockery now, but with curiosity. Brianna froze mid-laugh when she saw her. Tyler looked away. Amira said nothing. She went straight to her locker, slid her journal inside, and closed it gently. Then she walked to class, her head high. At lunch, she sat in her usual corner. But this time she opened her notebook, not to hide, but to create. Pages filled quickly, her handwriting fierce and confident. Across the room, two freshmen whispered, "That's her," another student muttered, "She's the girl from the video." She heard it all. And for the first time, it didn't sting. It fueled her that evening. Amira took a photo of one of her new poems and posted it to her small Instagram account, where she normally shared sketches. She didn't overthink it. No hashtags, no captions, just the poem. They laughed when I was quiet. They laughed when I spoke. Now they're quiet, and I'm just getting started. She put the phone down, expecting nothing. By morning, the post had 20,000 likes. Messages poured in from other students, strangers, even adults. "You spoke what I've felt for years. You turned pain into power. Keep going. We need your voice." Her poems started to spread, reshared, quoted, even read aloud in TikTok videos. Local news picked up the story. Students' powerful response to bullying goes viral. Fairview High couldn't ignore it anymore. The principal called Amira into his office, walls lined with old trophies and fading photos. "Amira," he began, shifting uncomfortably, "we saw your posts. I want to say first that what happened was unacceptable. We're taking disciplinary action against Tyler and Brianna." Amira nodded. "Okay." He hesitated. "But the attention this is getting online, maybe it's best to take a break from social media. Things can escalate quickly." She looked him straight in the eye. "With respect, sir, the only thing that's escalating is awareness. For once, people are listening." He didn't have a response. That weekend, Amira was invited to speak at a local youth event, a poetry night organized by a community center. Downtown? She almost said no. The idea of standing in front of people made her stomach twist. But that night, she opened her journal again and saw her own handwriting. That line, "You can't break what refuses to stay small," and she whispered to herself, "It's time." The room was packed. Rows of folding chairs filled with teenagers, parents, teachers. The air smelled like coffee and nerves. On stage, under soft yellow lights, Amira stood gripping the microphone, her palms sweating. Her heart pounded so loud she thought the mic would pick it up. For a moment she wanted to run, to vanish, to go back to her safe silence. But then, from somewhere in the crowd, a voice called softly, "You got this, girl," she exhaled, and then she began to speak. "They told me silence was strength. They told me not to cause trouble. But when trouble found me, silence didn't protect me. It buried me. I was hit once, but that wasn't the pain that stayed. The pain that stayed was everyone who saw it and said nothing." The room was still. You don't need fists to fight back. Sometimes all it takes is words. A hush fell so deep, it felt sacred. When she finished, people didn't just clap, they stood. A slow, rising ovation that seemed to last forever, and in that sea of faces, she saw something new. Not pity, not curiosity, but respect. The next day, clips from her speech spread online. Her voice, once quiet, was now everywhere, on Instagram, on TikTok, on news pages. Her poem was quoted under hashtags like #SpeakForAmira and #VoiceUnbroken. Tyler's single quotes suspension became official. Brianna's parents pulled her from school for personal reasons. But Amira didn't post about revenge. She posted about healing. "Forgiveness isn't weakness," she wrote. "It's freedom. But don't mistake my peace for forgetfulness. I remember everything, and that's how I grow." People began reaching out, kids from other towns, other schools. They told her their own stories, bullying, racism, silence. Some asked her how to stay strong. She never claimed to have the answers, but she always replied, "Start by speaking, even if your voice shakes." Weeks later, Fairview High held a student assembly, the first of its kind, about respect, empathy, and online cruelty. The principal invited Amira to close the program when she walked onto the stage of her own school auditorium. Her knees wobbled, but her spirit didn't. The same kids who once laughed now leaned forward. Listening, she looked out over the crowd, hundreds of faces. She found Brianna's empty seat near the middle, and then she began. A while ago, I thought silence made me safe. But it didn't. It just made me invisible. So if you ever see something wrong and you stay quiet, remember, you're not a bystander. You're a witness. And silence is testimony too. Her words landed heavy, but not bitter. They carried hope. To the ones who hurt me, I forgive you. Not because it's easy, but because I won't let what you did define me. I define me. When she stepped off the stage, the applause was thunderous, not out of shock this time, but out of admiration. For the first time in her life, Amira didn't feel small. She didn't feel shy. She felt heard. That evening, as she walked home, the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of gold and fire. She pulled out her journal one last time for the day. This began with silence, she wrote, but it ends with sound, my sound. And though she didn't know it yet, her journey was far from over, because that one speech, that one moment, would ripple outward, touching lives she'd never meet. People would quote her. Teachers would share her poem. Girls she'd never met would whisper her name with quiet pride. Amira didn't plan to be a symbol. She just wanted to be free, and that's exactly what she had become. The gym smelled faintly of wax and dust, that same scent that always clung to school assemblies. Rows of metal chairs lined the basketball court, filled with students whispering under their breath, the sound of their chatter echoing off the high ceiling. Teachers stood along the walls, arms folded, tending to maintain order. But there was something different in the air, that morning attention that pulsed like electricity. Everyone knew what this assembly was about. Fairview High had been forced into a public reckoning. The viral video, the news stories, the backlash, it had all come home to roost. The principal stood at the podium, his voice formal. Almost trembling today, he began. We gather to address the recent incident that has impacted not only our school, but our entire community. It is our responsibility to ensure that every student feels safe, respected, and heard. His words drifted, polite but empty. Most students weren't listening. They were waiting. Waiting for her. Amira sat near the front, hands folded in her lap, her heart thudding beneath her ribs. Her notebook rested on her knees, the same one that had once hit the hallway floor when the world fell apart. She glanced at it now, the corners worn soft, the pages swollen from ink and tears. She had been asked to speak the voice of the students. The principal had called her when she'd agreed. She hadn't realized they would be here to cross the gym. Near the back row, Brianna sat stiffly beside her mother, face pale, lips pressed tight. Tyler was there as well, flanked by a counselor and his father, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. His once cocky expression was gone, replaced by something unreadable. Amira hadn't seen them since that day, and now she would face them not in anger, but in truth. The principal stepped back. Please welcome Amira Johnson. Applause rippled through the gym, hesitant at first, then louder, warmer. As she rose, her knees felt weak, but her resolve burned steady. She took a breath, held her journal close, and walked to the microphone. For a moment, she just stood there, staring out over the sea of faces. Hundreds of them. The same faces that had once looked away. She adjusted the mic. Her voice, when it came, was soft, but it carried. A few weeks ago I was hit, right here in this school, in front of all of you. The room went still. It wasn't just a slap. It was a message, a reminder that silence makes some people think they can do whatever they want. She paused, looking around. Some students lowered their eyes. Others stared at her, transfixed. But here's the thing about silence. It doesn't last forever. One day it cracks. One day, it turns into a voice that won't be ignored. Her words echoed across the gym, threading through the crowd like wind through glass. That day when it happened, I felt small. I felt like disappearing. And maybe some of you thought I should disappear, because that's easier, isn't it? To laugh, to film, to walk away. Her gaze flicked toward the back where Brianna sat frozen, eyes glistening. But I didn't disappear. I wrote. I spoke. And the world listened. Not because I'm special, but because I finally believed I was worth listening to. A murmur swept through the crowd, the kind that comes when truth hits too close to home. I'm not here to humiliate anyone. I'm not here to get revenge. I'm here because this, she held up her notebook. It's what happens when you stop letting other people write your story for you. Her hand shook slightly as she opened it to a marked page. She began to read. You called me quiet. I called it peace. You called me weak. I called it mercy. You called me invisible. But look who you see now. The words landed heavy. Even the teacher stood motionless. Then, from somewhere near the back, a voice muttered low, almost mocking, "Guess she's a celebrity now?" Tyler, it wasn't loud, but in the silence of the gym, it was enough. Heads turned. His father shot him a warning glance, but Amira raised her hand gently. It's okay, she said. Let him speak. That's what this is about, isn't it? Voices. Tyler froze, uncertain. Amira turned toward him fully. You think this is fame? You think I wanted to go viral for being humiliated? For being hit? He didn't respond. His jaw tightened. You hit me because you could. Because you thought I wouldn't fight back? And you were right. I didn't hit you back. But I did stand up. Her tone didn't rise. It deepened. It carried weight. And now you have to stand here and listen. Because all of this isn't just about you or me. It's about every single person who has ever been hurt, laughed at, or ignored while everyone else did nothing. The gym was silent again. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to hum quieter. People ask me if I forgive you. And the answer is yes. But forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's remembering without letting it control you. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Tyler's hand dropped to his lap. His eyes glistened, not defiance this time, but something raw, almost broken. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Finally, he stood. Everyone's eyes followed him. He cleared his throat, his voice low and shaky. I was stupid, he said. I thought it was a joke. Everyone laughed, so I laughed too. I didn't realize how far it went, how much it hurt. I can't take it back. But I'm sorry. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even Brianna turned to stare at him. Amira blinked, taken aback. She hadn't expected that. He went on. I saw the video after. I saw your face. And I couldn't stop thinking. If someone had done that to my little sister, I'd lose my mind. You didn't deserve that. You didn't deserve any of it. He swallowed hard, his voice breaking. I know sorry doesn't fix it. But I mean it. For the first time since that day, Amira saw not the bully, but a boy. A flawed, scared human boy who had finally seen the truth of himself. She nodded slowly. Thank you. Brianna buried her face in her hands. Her mother whispered something to her, but she shook her head. Then, trembling, she stood as well. I started it, she said, voice cracking. I made fun of you first. Because I was jealous. You were smart and quiet and didn't care what people thought. And I did. I cared too much. I thought tearing someone else down would make me feel bigger. But it just made me empty. Tears streaked her face. I'm sorry too. The entire gym seemed to hold its breath, and then slowly, almost hesitantly, students began to clap. Not polite applause, but something deeper. Real. Human. Forgiving. Amira felt her chest tighten, her eyes burn. She hadn't expected this, not repentance, not release, but here it was. She turned back to the microphone. This is what change looks like. It's messy. It's painful. But it's possible. The clapping grew louder. If you take anything from this, remember that silence doesn't protect you, and cruelty doesn't define you. You can always choose again. Her final words came out soft but steady, and when you finally choose to speak, make sure your voice builds something instead of breaking it. Thunderous applause erupted. Some students stood. Others cried quietly. Teachers wiped their eyes, pretending to be composed. The principal stepped forward, voice shaking. Thank you, Amira. You've given us more than words today. You've given us perspective. But the applause wasn't for the principal. It was for her. Amira stepped back, overwhelmed. Tyler and Brianna were still standing, silent, eyes lowered. But changed. When the noise finally began to fade, Amira turned and walked off stage. As she passed Tyler, he whispered, "Thank you. For letting me say it?" She nodded. "You needed to." Outside, the sky was bright, the sun spilling through the windows in long golden streaks. She stepped into the hallway, the same one where it all began. It looked smaller now, lighter. Her reflection shimmered faintly in a trophy case. The shy girl who once hid behind silence. Now, standing tall, unafraid, she smiled faintly. They laughed once, she whispered to herself. But they're not laughing now. For the first time, it wasn't about them anymore. It was about her, her strength, her story, her voice. The gym had emptied hours ago, yet the echo of the applause still lingered in Amira's ears. She stood outside the school, the late afternoon sun stretching long, warm shadows across the cracked pavement. The same place that had once felt like a cage now looked open. For the first time in months, she wasn't rushing home. She simply stood there, breathing in the cool air, listening to the quiet rhythm of the world around her. It was almost hard to believe it had only been a few weeks since everything had fallen apart. A group of freshmen passed by. One of them stopped, hesitant. "Hi," the girl said softly. "Your speech was amazing." Amira smiled. "Thank you," the girl nodded, eyes bright. "People listen to you now. It gives us courage." Courage. The word struck something inside her. It was what she had been searching for all along, not fame. Not attention, just the courage to exist out loud. That evening at home, her mother sat across the kitchen table, a mug of tea steaming between them. "You were incredible," she said, pride shimmering in her voice. "They showed your speech on the local news. Even my coworkers were talking about it." Amira blushed. "It still feels weird. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Her mother reached out, resting a gentle hand over hers. "Sometimes the things we don't plan end up being the things we're meant to do." Amira looked down at her notebook lying on the table. It had followed her through every moment, the good and the painful. Now it looked less like a shield and more like a companion. She opened it to a blank page and wrote, "Strength isn't loud. Sometimes it's just steady." The following week, Fairview High began changing, slowly, awkwardly, but noticeably. Posters about respect and empathy filled the halls. Teachers began holding open mic lunches where students could share poems or stories. What once was a place of whispers now hummed with conversation. Even Tyler started showing up to those sessions. He didn't speak much, but he listened. Sometimes he stayed after to help clean up the chairs. Brianna joined too, her once perfect hair tied back in a messy bun, her phone left untouched on the table. The queen and her court had dissolved into ordinary kids trying to understand themselves. Amira never gloated. She smiled politely when they passed and went on with her day. Forgiveness, she had realized, wasn't a dramatic moment. It was quiet and constant, a choice she made every morning when she looked at her reflection and decided she was free at night. She began recording voiceovers of her poems. She'd sit by her window, city lights flickering beyond the glass, speak her words into a small microphone. To the girl who's still hiding behind her silence, "I see you. I know what it feels like to swallow words until your throat aches. But trust me, you are not invisible. The world just hasn't learned to look in the right direction yet." She posted them online under the name The Quiet Voice. Within days, messages poured in again, this time from beyond her town, from other states, even other countries. People told her how her story helped them tell their own. Some wrote about standing up to bullies. Others wrote about forgiving people who'd hurt them. Amira read every message. She cried through some of them. She smiled through most. And each one reminded her that her pain had found a purpose. Months passed. Spring painted Fairview in soft greens and golds. Graduation loomed on the horizon, and with it came the bittersweet feeling of endings and beginnings. On the last day of school, Amira walked through the hall one final time. The walls were covered with art drawings, poems, essays from students inspired by her story. Near the library, She stopped to read a poster covered with handwritten notes. "Thank you for speaking up. You made me brave." Silence isn't PCITs, just the space before truth. Her chest tightened. She hadn't realized how many hearts her voice had touched. As she reached her locker, she found an envelope taped to it. Inside was a short letter, "You changed me." There was no need to ask who it was from. She folded the note carefully, placed it in her notebook, and smiled. Graduation day arrived, warm and bright. The football field buzzed with laughter, camera flashes, and the smell of fresh-cut grass. Rows of chairs filled with caps and gowns shimmered under the sun. When Amira's name was called, the applause that followed wasn't just polite, it was thunderous. Teachers stood, students cheered, her mother wiped tears behind her sunglasses as she crossed the stage to receive her diploma. She glanced toward the stands. Tyler was there, clapping. Brianna, too. It didn't erase what had happened, but it felt right. A chapter closing with grace instead of bitterness. After the ceremony, her English teacher, Mr. Lawson, approached her. "You know," he said, smiling, "I used to tell my classes that words can start revolutions. I don't think they believed me until you." She laughed softly. "I didn't start a revolution." He tilted his head. "Maybe not. But you started something just as important, change. That summer." Amira received an invitation to speak at a youth conference in Atlanta, gathering for young creators and activists. The theme, the power of voice. Standing backstage before her turn, she felt that old nervous flutter again. She glanced at the crowd through the curtain, hundreds of faces waiting, just like before. But this time, it didn't feel like judgment. It felt like possibility. She stepped out beneath the bright lights. "A year ago," she began, "I thought silence would keep me safe. I thought if I didn't make noise, I couldn't be hurt. But silence isn't safety, it's surrender. The truth is, we all have a voice. Some of us just forget how to use it. And sometimes the world teaches us to stay quiet because our words make people uncomfortable. But comfort never changed anything. Courage did." The audience leaned in, listening, some nodding, some already tearing up. If you've ever been laughed at, ignored, or pushed aside, listen to me now. You are more than the moments that tried to break you. You are the sound that comes after the silence. The crowd rose to its feet. Flashbulbs, applause, tears. In that wave of sound, Mira felt something click inside her, the final piece of healing sliding into place. After the conference, she walked alone through the city streets, the night air warm and alive. Music drifted from an open cafe, laughter spilling out onto the sidewalk. She stopped to watch a group of kids dancing, carefree. Unafraid, a little girl, maybe 8 or 9, noticed her and waved shyly. "You're the girl from the video, right?" Amira hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, that was me." The girl grinned. "My mom showed me your poem. I wrote one too. Can I hear it?" The girl nodded and recited, stumbling over a few words, but finishing proudly. Amira clapped softly. "That was beautiful. Don't stop writing." "Because you didn't." The simple sentence hit harder than anything Amira had ever read online. As the girl skipped away, Amira looked up at the sky, vast, endless, full of stars, and whispered a quiet thank you to whatever force had carried her this far. When she returned home that night, she opened her notebook for the last entry of the school year. "I used to think my voice was too small to matter. But maybe small voices just need big echoes." She closed the cover gently. The notebook was full of pain, of growth, of proof that even in the darkest hallways, light can find its way through a crack. Epilogue. 6 months later, Amira sat in a college dorm room overlooking a city skyline. Her walls were covered with art prints and scribbled quotes. On her desk, a stack of letters from readers and a microphone labeled the Quiet Voice Podcast. She hit the record button. "Hey everyone, it's Amira. When I started sharing my story, I didn't know anyone would care. I just needed to be heard. But what I learned is this: being heard isn't the goal, being understood is. And when you speak your truth, even softly, the right people will always listen." She smiled into the mic. So if you're listening right now and you're scared to speak, this is your sign. Your story matters. Your voice matters. And maybe, just maybe, the world has been waiting for your words. The recording light flicked off. She leaned back, letting the silence settle around her, not the heavy silence of fear, but the peaceful kind that comes after saying everything you needed to say. She looked at her new notebook, blank and waiting. The story wasn't over. It never really would be. Closing voiceover for video ending high CTR outro. If Amira's story touched your heart, don't scroll away. Hit subscribe and join the family. We tell stories like hers every week. Stories of courage, redemption, and voices that refuse to stay silent. Because somewhere out there, another Amira is waiting to be heard. And you could be the one who listens. Fade out. Gentle piano music. Screen transitions to channel logo with words. The quiet voice. True stories that heal. If Amira's story moved you, don't just scroll past it. Because somewhere out there, another Amira is still sitting alone at her desk, waiting for someone to remind her she's seen. Hit that subscribe button right now, because every week we tell stories like hers. Stories the world forgets until someone speaks them out loud. Real stories. Raw stories. The ones that hurt, heal. And if you believe silence should never win again, prove it. Leave a comment below with one word that describes what courage means to you. I read every single one. Slight pause. Music swells softly. This isn't just a channel. It's a movement for every quiet voice that's learning to roar. So join us. Because stories like this don't just deserve to be told. They deserve to be heard. Music dips, then builds for cliffhanger tease. And next week, you'll meet a boy who refused to stay broken and the secret that turned his pain into power. Music resolves into final piano chord. Screen fades to black with the words, "The quiet voice, true stories that heal."